This video is all about an extraordinary overpowered buff, possibly the most overpowered damage buff in World of Warcraft ever, which Blizzard inexplicably allowed every player to access easily. And not just that, Blizzard massively screwed up and allowed you to take the buff into the heart of your enemy faction's capital in Stormwind or Orgrimmar and one-shot anybody unfortunate enough to get in your way for millions of damage. Now, I must first thank my longtime viewer and expert exploiter Margot for alerting me to the existence of this fascinating buff. Getting it was absurdly easy. You simply completed the introductory quest to the Love is in the Air event. For Alliance, this was outside the gates of Stormwind, and then took the daily quest, The Gift of Relief, from the Pandaren Ying here. The quest is in keeping with the history of Love is in the Air quests, which are nothing to do with romance and everything to do with mindless violence for no particular reason. You go to the training dummies in Stormwind, and every attack will give you a stack of a buff called Relieving Frustration. This stacks to 250, and maximum stacks will get you a truly incredible 6,250% damage bonus. And as if that were not enough, you also got an amazing 500% haste bonus. Now, this was intentional by Blizzard. They clearly intended this buff to be used against your faction capital's training dummies only. And naturally, being an exploiter, I wanted to see if I could find some way to take it out of the area. Now, with this type of buff, I tested in 100 different ways to see if there is some kind of glaring error in the coding. For example, it is very unlikely, but just possible, that since the training dummies trigger the buff, a very lazy coder might have just made it so that you could get the buff not just from your own faction's training dummies, but also that of the enemy faction. In reality, of course, a AAA company is very unlikely to make such a glaring mistake. Wait, they actually did that. Jesus Christ. Why is this an issue? Well, you go into the area with the training dummies and build up your damage and haste buff. Then you kill anyone who comes into the area. You aren't technically invincible, but in practice, nothing can survive long enough to damage you once you've got 250 stacks of the buff. I found the best way to build stacks was using Flame Strike talented with Flame Patch, as this builds stacks of Relieving Frustration super fast. Each tick of a Fire Mage's Ignite generates a stack also, so you can get max stacks in under a minute. You could do the same thing with all classes, but this was the quickest method. You can see here how much damage you can do when I test out my superpowers on these nearby NPCs. Multi-millions of damage that one-shot everything. And you could do the same with any players in the vicinity, generating some nice, fast honor. I had to junk half the footage of me killing other players in this video because they died so fast you can't even see it that clearly in most cases. Now, at this point I was thinking I'd actually broken WoW, but there was a major problem with the buff, and that's that Blizzard had wisely put in a fail-safe here. The buff only lasts 4 seconds, which is not much time to do anything. In Orgrimmar, most players are congregated in the auction house area near the main gate, which is a short but significant distance away from the target dummies. The same is true of Stormwind's trade district. You could use some kind of damage over time effect to keep the buff ticking, and I tried this with a Warlock using Absolute Corruption, a damage over time effect which when talented is literally endless. This allowed me to move about 100 yards away from the dummies and retain the buff, but any further and you stop gaining stacks of the buff and it expired. I think Blizzard have lowered the effective range of Absolute Corruption as a reaction to a previous Warlock exploit I used in Orgrimmar a few years back. I also tried building up a stack of Icicles with my mage in Frost specialization. Icicles store a percentage of damage from a frostbolt for up to a minute, so in theory you could build up a stack of icicles with your superpowered buff and then unleash them elsewhere. However, in practice this doesn't work because the extra damage from the buff didn't persist in the icicles after the buff expired, with comical results. So Blizzard didn't quite drop the ball on this one, though I did have a lot of fun with it. I'm about to upload one of the best ever gold making hacks I've come across, a method to run dungeons infinitely without lockout on Season of Discovery, Classic and Retail, to my Patreon. So if you ever fancied signing up, now is a really good time to do so.